G'day mates, thanks for tuning in. On today's documentary, we're going to be discovering the wild and wacky world of AIDS. Let's get right to it. Now, before we get to the territory of AIDS, you should know it actually stands for Acquired Immune Deficiency Syndrome. It's actually a set of symptoms acquired by contracting HIV virus. HIV is known as Human Immunodeficiency Virus. It's called HIV for short. The Australians like to keep things short. Now, over 70 million people worldwide are infected by HIV, and over 35 million people have died since the AIDS epidemic started. And AIDS is nearly a product of the HIV. Now, we're going to get into the history and preventative measures of AIDS. We'll be looking at what you can do for AIDS. Don't worry, mate. We'll look at all the dangers. So if you ever come across a wild AIDS out there in the wild, you won't need to worry. I've taught you exactly what to do in this situation. We're going to go into AIDS natural habitat.
I'm here with the local AIDS expert, my best mate, Steve. So, Steve, what can you tell us about the origins of AIDS? Where'd it come from?
Well, scientists have been able to trace the origins of HIV back to chimpanzees and apes.
What?
Yes, it was initially known as Simian Immunodeficiency Virus, or SIV, and then developed into the HIV we know now in the primates.
Primates have been known to eat other primates. Chimps got the SIV from eating other monkeys. Simian, by the way, it means monkey or primate. Well, H is human. Thus humans. Since then, hunters likely contracted the HIV virus from either eating primates who were affected by it, or their blood from their wounds from hunting got mixed with the blood from a primate. But it's true, it did originate in Africa. Since then, it's been spreading across the world like Australian wildfire.
The virus may have spread through infrastructure routes, roads, railways, rivers, via migrants, and the sex trade.
AIDS epidemic reached the United States by about 1970, but it exploded in popularity in the 1980s.
As the disease appeared to affect mostly homosexual men, officials initially called it the gay-related immune disease.
So much so that in the 1983, it was called the gay plague, and for many years after, it's been called that the same.
1982, CDC referred to the disease as AIDS for the very first time. By the end of the year, AIDS cases were also reported in a number of European countries.
AIDS. So pronounce it, mate. Now that we cover the history of AIDS, we talk about how to contract it. A lot of people catch AIDS through blood transfusions. It's found a lot in drug users because you unsterilized needles. Any birth, you can get it if your mother had AIDS, and as long as there's fluid involved in that birth, you can get AIDS. I mean, if your mom had AIDS. But the most common way it was spread was through homosexual activity. It can be spread heterosexually if one of the partners had been homo in the past.
Or got AIDS some other way.
All that. Can you tell us a little bit about preventive measures from getting AIDS? I'll make sure my people out there are aware of the dangers.
Well, take it from a guy who does not have AIDS. Avoid unsterilized needles, so don't do drugs. And don't sleep with someone who has HIV. If you don't know, don't do it. And last of all, avoid contact with other people's blood, because that's another way AIDS can spread.
Good night. Speaking of blood night, until 2015, gay men weren't even allowed to donate unless they'd been celibate for at least a year. Now that we've covered the history and some preventative measures of AIDS, next going to take you into what you can do with AIDS. We need you to be active in the community, fighting AIDS and HIV with all you got. And the answer is exercise. Cure all.
Oh.
Alright, thank you for your time. Pediatrologist.
Good to your meteorologist.
Peter Meteorologist. Whatever, he's a smart dude. Put up words at the bottom of the screen saying smart dude. Alright,
Peter Meteor.
moving on.
Hello again.
let's talk exercise. Now, research has proven time and time again that both resistance training and cardiovascular training benefits those infected with the HIV virus. Just like it would for the normal population, though there are special considerations you need to take into account when dealing with people with HIV. Now, there's 3 stages one can progress when one is attached to the HIV virus. There's asymptomatic, symptomatic, and AIDS. With symptomatic progression, you can do the basic ACMS guidelines for exercise. You should all have that memorized by now. Now, when you're symptomatic or progressing straight to AIDS, you will do the basic recommendations, the CDD-4 recommendations. That would be resistance training, but 2-3 days a week. Cardiovascular training, 4 to 5. Flexibility, 3. You got to monitor the intensity according to the patient. For patients can vary from being basically normal functioning to being very ill when they have the HIV virus, and depending on what stage of the symptoms they're at. So when we get our exercise program, yes, you're going to get all of my exercise programs. We'll make sure that we have lots of modifications, because not everyone is going to be able to handle all the things I have planned for them, because you all have AIDS, and AIDS is potentially very debilitating and give you a lower VO2 threshold, and you tire much easier. If you or someone you know has AIDS or HIV, you need to contact your family doctor before coming to exercise. If you're on any medication, we've got to know about it, because that will deeply change the way you work out. Since fatigue comes easily, often to those with symptomatic or AIDS stages of HIV, they can have tire quickly, and even in low intensity workouts can lose their breath in a very short amount of time. So it's recommended low to moderate intensity, though if they can handle it, high intensity exercise has proven very beneficial to those with HIV.
So, what have we learned? Well, hopefully a lot. But the main takeaway I want you to leave with is that people with HIV can have various different stages of capabilities, and most often people with symptomatic or AIDS stages of HIV infection will have a higher risk of catabolic disease, and therefore cardiovascular exercise is the #1 recommendation. Now, most people suffering from AIDS are on heavy medication that greatly affects how they can work out. We'll need a note from the doctor saying what they can and cannot do so that they can exercise safely. We can all fill out part Q. Now, I already touched on the ACMS guidelines saying that people with asymptomatic HIV can just perform the basic guidelines, and just a refresher, it's about 150 minutes of moderate to intense cardiovascular activity every week. And remember, that's for asymptomatic people with HIV, which basically means their symptoms don't affect them that much. Resistance training 2 to 3 days a week at about 60 to 80% intensity, and flexibility 3 to 4 days a week. Now, thankfully, we have tons of researchers commonly looking up ways to both prevent HIV and help those suffering from it. But exercise is a thing we can all do to some degree. Now, as far as what types of exercise you could be doing with HIV or AIDS, really depends on what medications you've been taking and what your level of infection really is. Like whether you're asymptomatic, symptomatic, or AIDS. Now, as it's highly recommended, your cardiovascular activity, that could mean literally swimming, biking, running, anything to get you moving, but you make sure that there's easy access to water, as people with AIDS fatigue very quickly and they'll have to have fairly low intensity cardiovascular exercise, especially as they're starting. So knowing that exercise is one of the most key factors to helping people suffering from AIDS and HIV, to enable you to go out there, make the world a better place. Thank you for tuning in with me. See you all next week.